Joshua Harris was once a well-known person in evangelical Christianity. Years after giving up his faith, he is still talked about and thought about, and the effects of his best-selling book, I Kissed Dating Goodbye, are still being felt. The other day, Harris shared an updated version of his public apology for the harm his book, which was a big part of the purity culture movement in the 1990s, caused. The responses have been mostly negative, which shows how pure culture still affects people and how Harris's journey is changing. When Harris's first single, I Kissed Dating Goodbye, came out in 1997, she was only 21 years old. Its message was a big change from traditional dating. It pushed for courtship as a more God-honoring way to get married. Set clear limits so that you don't get too close emotionally or physically before you get married. The book hit home with conservative Christians and went on to sell more than 1 million copies, making it an important text in the purity culture movement. But the message of the book, which won it a lot of praise, also made a lot of people afraid, ashamed, and confused about their sexuality, relationships, and identities. Over time, reviewers, including Harris himself, started to look more closely at what the book taught and what it meant for people who grew up with it. Harris lost faith in his book years before he publicly apologized. It was the start of a journey of reevaluation. Between 2015 and 2018, Harris was in graduate school and talked to people who told him how I Kissed Dating Goodbye had changed their lives. What they said. When put together with his own life events, they made him rethink the book's main ideas in a deeper way. In 2018, Harris officially apologized for the harm the book did, stopped publishing it, and made a documentary called I Survived, I Kissed Dating Goodbye. The movie looked at the unexpected effects of the book's lessons and how Harris's views changed over time. The documentary's title asked a powerful question. As a 21-year-old, what if your thoughts on sex and relationships affected a lot of people? The apology on Instagram. Harris recently shared an updated version of his 2018 statement on Instagram. He said, "To those who were hurt by the book, I want to say I am truly sorry. I'm sorry that its message made people afraid, ashamed, or confused about sexuality, relationships, and who they are. Even though I can't fix what I did, I hope that this explanation and the things I've done since will help people feel better." Harris talked more about his journey of reevaluation and admitted that his ideas had changed a lot in the last 20 years. It was the main idea of the book that he disagreed with. He said, "I now think dating can be a healthy part of developing relationships and learning what qualities are most important in a partner." Thoughts and criticism. Harris pointed out a number of problems with his book, such as the fact that it didn't take into account how complicated relationships are, and that it promoted damaging purity culture ideas. Aside from the damage his lessons did to straight relationships, he also said sorry for how they hurt and alienated LGBTQ+ people. When Harris thought about the cultural setting of his book, he said, "and how it has made me think about sex and gender and a lot of other people." Harris also said that his criticisms and apology are part of a larger effort to help people heal and understand how his book affected the movement it helped start. The bigger picture, the Purity Society, and what it left behind. In the 1990s, conservative Christian groups popularized a movement called purity culture, which stressed and hard rules about sexuality as a way to measure spiritual worth. People in the movement often felt guilty, ashamed, and had unrealistic ideas about relationships and sexuality, even though the movement's goal was to support moral values. Harris' I Kissed People Dating Goodbye was an important part of this movement and changed what youth groups, schools, and families believed and did. Some people have said that the strict lessons of purity culture often reinforced harmful stereotypes and patriarchal norms and didn't prepare people for the complicated relationships that come with being an adult. An alteration in myself. Harris' public life has been about more than just criticizing religion and culture. It has also been about changing himself. Harris quit his job as leader of the Sovereign Grace Church in Maryland, and Harris went to graduate school and started to grow apart from evangelical Christianity. Harris and his wife Shannon said they were splitting up in 2019, and Harris said he no longer saw himself as a Christian. Harris now calls himself a seeker and agrees with people who talk about religious trauma and the risks of manipulative, fear-based religion. Many people who grew up in purity culture and are now questioning their faith have been moved by his honest reflections and desire to admit his mistakes in public. A lot of people have responded to Harris's Instagram post in which she apologized. A lot of people who commented thanked him for being humble and honest, while others pointed out how lessons from the purity culture continue to hurt people. One person wrote, "The ideas in your book were used to teach purity culture to the teens in my group. Reading this statement and seeing your new way of doing things on social media is very helpful for me." Someone else said, "I was hurt by the book too, but I don't blame you because I now understand that a much stronger cultural force was at work than you." Some followers, on the other hand, supported Harris's earlier work by saying that the book had made their lives better. One person said, "Your book helped me connect with God through his son, Jesus Christ, and that has changed my life so much." The conversation that's going on. Harris's apology and thoughts show how complicated the legacy of I Kissed Dating Goodbye and the cause it stood for is. His story opens up bigger conversations about who is responsible, how religion teachings affect people, and how to heal from spiritual trauma. For many, Harris's decision to look back at his past and clearly say that his books hurt people is an example of how to be humble and grow. One person said, "This was a painful but necessary journey of reevaluation, reflection, and apologizing." As we continue to work through these very personal problems together, I hope it helps us see things more clearly, makes room for honest conversations, and inspires compassion. Joshua Harris, founder of Clear and Loud, posted an updated version of his message on Instagram in which he says he is sorry for the harm his book I Kissed Dating Goodbye caused. Harris first put out his statement in 2018, the same year he stopped publishing his best-selling book. What Harris wrote in the post's caption, "I first shared this statement on my website in 2018, but I've never shared it on Instagram. For those who still want to know why I changed my mind about I Kissed Dating Goodbye, I made these slides with an updated version of the full message. I want to say I'm truly sorry to everyone who was hurt by the book," he went on. "I'm sorry that its message made people afraid, ashamed, or confused about sexuality, relationships, and who they are. Even though I can't fix what I did, I hope that this explanation and the things I've done since will help people feel better." Joshua Harris wrote I Kissed Dating Goodbye and put it out in 1997 when he was 21 years old. The book told Christians to give up dating and look for marriage in more God-honoring ways. The book was a big part of the purity culture movement in the 1990s and sold over 1 million copies. It was a big hit with evangelicals. Harris did think his book was flawed, though, after some time. In 2018, he put out a statement saying sorry for the book because he thought it had done enough harm to warrant stopping its release. In the same year, Harris made a documentary about how his book changed the lives of a group of people. Why would you change the way you think about sex and relationships when you're 21? That was the question asked in the movie's title. Harris was a leader at MD's Sovereign Grace Church before he went to graduate school in 2015 and learned how to be a minister from C.J. Mahoney. Joshua Harris and Shannon Harris, who was his wife at the time, said they were splitting up in July 2019. Christian evangelicals were even more shocked when Harris said he no longer saw himself as a Christian soon after the news. Shannon, whose name is now Shannon Hendrickson, has been working through her own deconstruction journey and has since written a book called The Woman They Wanted: Breaking the Idea of a Good Christian Wife. In the beginning of his statement, Harris says that for many years people have asked him if he still thinks what he wrote in I Kissed Dating Goodbye. Besides this question, he said, "Some readers have told me the book hurt them." Harris then talks about when and how he started to rethink his book. From 2015 to 2018, while he was in graduate school, he heard from many people in different ways about how the book changed their lives. He also made a documentary about my book and did an in-depth study of the problems surrounding it, which was overseen by one of my graduate school professors. Harris wrote, "It goes without saying that my views have changed a great deal in the last 20 years. I no longer agree with its main point, which is that people shouldn't date. I now believe that dating can be a good way to learn about relationships and figure out what traits are most important in a partner." Harris talked about what he thought went wrong with his book, apologized to those it hurt, and said he was glad it helped some people. "I don't remember all the copies of my book that have been printed," he said, "as well as the many talks I've done with the media in the last few years and the public critiques I've given in writing and in film are both my way of saying sorry and getting the word out about the issues I see with it." Harris went on to say that his views have changed a lot since his books weren't published and the documentary came out. "The end of my marriage was in 2019. As someone who has been hurt by purity culture and its ideas about sex and gender, I can see how true this is. I've especially said sorry for how my books and lessons have hurt LGBT people." He said that he didn't know how much my life would fall apart when he made the video. "I used to believe the same things, but I've learned that I no longer do." He said, "I see myself as a seeker. I'm thankful that people inside and outside of the church are being honest about the harm caused by purity culture preaching and religious trauma, and the danger of religion that is afraid-based, cunning, and controlling." In the last sentence of his Instagram post, Harris said, "This was a painful but necessary journey of reevaluation, reflection, and apology. As we continue to work through these very personal problems together, I hope it helps us see things more clearly, makes room for honest conversations, and inspires compassion." A lot of Harris's fans replied to his post in the comments by appreciating how honest and humble he was. Someone said, "You're so real for this man as someone who was hurt by the book. I don't blame you because I now understand that there was a much stronger culture force at work than just you. Your book was used in my youth group to spread the ideas of purity culture. Reading this statement and seeing your new way of doing things on social media is very healing for me. Someone else who followed said, "Wow, I did need that, I just didn't know it." Thank you for thinking about yourself, taking responsibility, and being honest. Most of the people who commented on the post seem to have been Christians as kids but have since left the faith. However, a few of them said Harris's books helped them and they were glad they read them. One person said, "Your book helped me connect with God through his son Jesus Christ. That has changed my life so much. I respect how honest and open you are. Thanks for telling me. I hope everything goes well for you. I have your books on my shelf.